All right, everybody. Pat Leonard here from the New York Daily News and the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast on the Believe Network. Welcome to a December 29th episode of Talkin Ball Postgame Live. And what do you know? Of course they did. The Giants score an ambush victory over the Indianapolis Colts, a Colts team that was playing for a playoff berth. You wouldn't have known it by watching them on the field. Arm tackle attempts everywhere. Malik Neighbors taking full advantage of that with two long touchdowns, including a 59-yarder in the second half. Drew Lock absolutely erupts in this game. 5 touchdowns accounted for, 4 passing touchdowns, 1 rushing, 2 to Neighbors, 1 to Slayton, 1 to Wan'Dale Robinson, and a lot to unpack here. Obviously, as the marquee on this podcast illustrates, we are going to discuss what this means for Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, not just the result of this game, but where things are going based on the lay of the land, what I'm hearing, the rumblings that we see continue to surface in the national media, how it's being talked about, and what is the best thing for this program. The immediate aftermath of this game, of course, is that the Giants have cost themselves draft positioning. We will see what it means in the end after their final game in Week 18 in Philadelphia, and whether that means a lot for the Eagles. Is Saquon Barkley going to end up playing? Is he going to be going for the rushing record? Or is it a game that the Giants are going to continue to fight hard in and win and further jeopardize their draft positioning? There's a lot at stake here and a lot to digest. I would start by explaining to you guys what I saw post-game from Brian Daboll. And we all know that nationally, you can see the reports continuing to echo what I have been stressing to you in our chats and on this podcast. And that is that it feels like there are people in position of power with the Giants organization who would prefer to split the baby here and would prefer to fire Brian Daboll and retain Joe Schoen. Now, we've seen that come up in numerous places now. Nationally, it's being echoed. The interesting part of that is after this victory, Brian Daboll came up to the podium and a couple different times seemed to be sending a message to ownership. He mentioned that's how the offense needs to perform. That's how the quarterback needs to perform. He later repeated, if you get good quarterback play, then you have an opportunity in every game. It seemed very much like Daboll was saying the mismanagement of the quarterback position and how the team has, listen, you could put it all in one bag, right? Re-signing Daniel Jones, not signing Russell Wilson in free agency, not drafting a quarterback in April. And then in Daboll's mind, of course, having the quarterback room be only Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, and Tommy DeVito put him behind the 8 ball and did him a disservice. And so I viewed this as Daboll's first parting shot, if he is indeed going to be fired, at ownership and at management, even at general manager Joe Schoen. This is Daboll saying, look at what I've had to work with. Look at what it looks like when we get good quarterback play with this offense. Now, in fairness to Daboll, he can say that and he can make that point. And absolutely, it's fair to say there have been games where, or I would say certain plays where a quarterback has made a mind-numbing mistake and has cost them. But obviously, Daboll was brought here because he's supposed to be the quarterback whisperer. It's one thing to say, hey, go get me a good quarterback. It's another thing to say, are you a coach who elevates quarterbacks? And is that proof of why we need to retain you and why we hired you in the first place and why you're still the right man to lead us, right? Like Drew Lock, if you can get a game like this out of Drew Lock, why can't you get it out of him sooner? Were you not able to build the offense around him? Were you not able to coach him up the same way you were able to coach up a player like Josh Allen? Maybe because Josh Allen is a freak athlete who's one of the best players in the NFL, and maybe some of that development on Daboll's end in Buffalo was inheriting an enormous talent. Maybe Josh Allen, no matter who he played for, would have reached a certain level of greatness, right? That's something that, as we watch now, as he might even win the MVP award this year as he contends with Lamar Jackson down the stretch, that's something to think about, certainly something that Joe Schoen and Giants ownership thinks about as they adjudge where blame and accountability deserves to fall here. So Daboll puts his argument out there now to us here in Week 17 with one game to play. And certainly I've been on record as saying I think it's insanity that while I do believe Daboll deserves to be fired and is not the right man to lead this team and franchise. I also think it is insanity to adjudge that the general manager would not be to blame for this mess, but the coach would. And I do agree with that point of what Daboll is implying as he stresses, look at the position you've put me in. Now, obviously a little fraudulent as Daboll stands up there and credits Shea Tierney, the quarterback's coach, for the quarterback play and for Drew Lock turning things around, and doesn't mention Mike Kafka, who is his assistant head coach and offensive coordinator. He's mentioning his passing game coordinator and quarterback coach, but not his offensive coordinator and assistant head coach. This obviously reinforces the point I've been driving home ever since last January, which is that they only retained Kafka as a way to look better as a staff and as a head coach because they were losing Wink Martindale. They were losing Thomas McGahee after firing him. And if Kafka had left, which he was trying to for Seattle, they would have been in a position where it would have been like, well, what's the argument again for keeping you if your entire staff is gone and doesn't want to work here, right? But so I saw Daboll crediting Tierney today and not mentioning Kafka at all as reinforcement of how fraudulent all of those so-called promotions were that we saw coming out of the 2023 season. Brian Daboll now with a 9-24 record in his last 33 games since that 2022 playoff year. Joe Schoen, of course, boasts the same record, the same failures, the same accountability for it. Now, positives we saw in this game, we will get into all of it. I like seeing this success for Drew Lock. I think he's a good guy, and I think he's a player who cares and tries hard. Frankly, even though he has not said this and no one has told me this directly in these exact words, my opinion is that Lock has never been completely comfortable with the offense that he is running here. And so because of that, I think it's taken them a while to tailor it to what he needs, to the way he plays, and obviously the personnel deficiencies on this team scream that there's a problem and that it's not just a Drew Lock or a Tommy DeVito or even a Daniel Jones. And yes, you do need better quarterback play, which is why when we look at the draft upcoming in April, it's why it was so important to the fan base, to everybody in the fan base that was grasping at straws for some hope, right? Something to hang your hat on. And the reason that everybody settled on the number one overall pick is because people felt like, well, it's obvious we need to turn over this whole quarterback room and draft our QB of the future. Maybe we'll finally have an opportunity to guarantee that we can get our guy. Right when they find themselves in the catbird seat there, Daboll and the players ruin it. And our good friend Joe Becker, Joey B, of Endicott, New York, a diehard Giants fan, a diehard Talkin Baller. He is now in the lead of the New York Daily News Giants analysis column that I wrote from the stadium today, because he brought a sign to the stadium and it said, "Dear Giants, please don't score for Shador," with his eyes on the number one overall pick. I think he spoke for a lot of Giants fans with that comment and with that sign. But you have to understand too, that's not just Joe saying only Shador. That's him saying, like, let's just get the number one pick at this point because we're so bad. Get our player and go, whether it's Cam Ward, Shador, whatever. But I thought that was really good. It was good color. It was a good, it was emblematic of how the fan base was feeling coming into this game. There were a select few in this stadium cheering for the Giants for making some good plays on the field against this lifeless Colts team. But by and large, I think most of the fan base stood with Joe coming into this game, in that they just wanted to see the Giants lose out and secure the number one pick. So as the Cleveland Browns currently play against the Miami Dolphins and are losing, the Giants at the moment sit with the number 3 overall pick. It's New England at 1, Tennessee at 2, the Giants at 3, and Cleveland at 4. I believe if the Browns go on to lose this game, and it looks like they will, I believe the Giants will fall to 4 and go into the final week with the 4th overall pick slot with 1 week of games remaining. And remember, Jacksonville, the Jets, Carolina, Vegas, and Chicago, they all have only 4 wins as well. Now, obviously, all of them don't need quarterbacks, but a lot of them do. So no sure thing here. Not only that you're getting a quarterback, but that you're getting a guy like Travis Hunter. So that guy 212 says, are they serious right now winning this game? Absolutely wild how they want to suck for years to come. That speaks for a lot of Giants fans frustrated by this result. This is the Giants' first win since October 6th. Back then, the Giants felt like they still had a chance to actually compete and do something. Now they're actually earning wins when it could hurt their ability to get a better player in April. But as Exec says here, there are fans who say, I enjoyed every minute today. Great to watch the G-men play competent and winning football. There are people who feel that way as well. Dan H. says, we got screwed good today, my friends. For Show KB, on the other hand, says, I'm not hating on the win, and Cam Ward's bowl game changed my mind. So with that, we get started here on Talkin Ball live postgame with Pat Leonard. Patrick Evans reminds all of you to hit that subscription button and the like button. Remember, hitting a like button while we are live helps grow our channel. It tells Giants and NFL fans out there that we are doing this. If you don't know already, I am the New York Daily News NFL columnist and Giants beat writer. This is Talkin Ball live postgame with Pat Leonard. I host the Talkin Ball podcast on the Believe Network, and we do guest interviews. We do lives during the weeks, other than a week like this past week where I was off for the Christmas holiday, have family in town, enjoying some much needed, I would say R&R, but it's more like a brief respite in the 24/7, 365 news cycle that is the NFL and is the Giants. We'll be going for about an hour more here on our podcast before I jump over on to a Zoom call with NBC New York. John Chandler, kind enough to have me on as a guest to talk NFL. It's always an honor going on NBC New York with Bruce Beck, with John Chandler, any of the local news stations, always privileged for those opportunities. But NBC, the top of the totem pole, the kings of the local sports market, and I can't thank them enough because they continue to support me and my effort to constantly do more television and just bring more of what I feel is the truth and sound analysis to Giants and NFL fans in the New York metropolitan area and to people around the country. Thank you all for being here. And I just want to tell you very quickly before we get into your questions and more comments and more analysis that I have on ownership. I want to tell you about our sponsors really quickly. It's MyBookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. MyBookie rolls out the red carpet for sports bettors every week this football season. My promo code is Pat's Picks. So if you go to the link in any of my social media profiles, you click on that link and you make your first deposit of $50 or more, you'll get a 50% match on that first deposit all the way up to $1,000. So that 50% match getting you an extra $500 for free to use gambling on your first $1,000 deposit or anything up to that. MyBookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. If you don't know already, you can find my picks every week in the Daily News on Fridays and on my social media throughout the week. I've honestly been doing more just every night, Thursday Night Football, Christmas games, Thanksgiving, and NFL Sundays and Monday nights, just giving out my picks, whether it's against the spread or straight up. And a lot more content coming in that regard on the sports betting angle with the Giants and with the NFL. But it's mybookie.ag. Go there now. They have a lot of offerings, a lot of different games you can play, a lot of different ways you can win, and whatever you like, whether it's my Giants sprinkles, the parlays I like to build, and my best bets every week, which normally the best way to find them is on my Instagram, PL and NFL. It's MyBookie. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, a natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally have felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today. Use the Talkin Ball 25 code right here or the QR code on your screen and get 25% off your first deposit and your first order on the subscribe and save option. So go to subscribe and save, order a bag, cost you only $30. You get that $25% discount, and it doesn't lock you in. So you can cancel the subscription if you want. It's just a good way for you guys to tell Boom Chaga that you're coming from Talkin Ball and that you're supporting us and supporting that product. BoomChaga.com. Start feeling the difference today. Again, QR code, Talkin Ball 25. And Estate 98 coffee, a specialty coffee concentrate, perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talkinball and get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. All right, let's get into the queue here. We have Manzo says, I would not give up a boatload of draft picks to move up in this draft for either of these two quarterbacks. I would trade back for Gabriel or take the best available player. Yeah, it really does feel tough that the Giants were in a position where if they did fall in love with a quarterback prospect, they could have just gotten him without mortgaging assets that they really want and that they're keen on selecting. They have to use assets to move up the board to go and get him. Obviously, with the state of the Giants roster at the moment, that's a tough sell. Daniel says, Pat, this was the worst thing that could have happened. Winning meaningless games now, we won't get a franchise quarterback. He also says, Pat, will Daboll survive now? That's a really interesting question, Daniel. I think Daboll was not acting today like someone who expected to survive in his role. He was making this impassioned plea and really kind of sending this direct shot to ownership about the quarterback position and about the composition of the roster. It sounded to me like somebody who felt like his fate has been decided, and he is now finally making his impassioned plea to kind of really to the masses and to the public to say, here's what I wanted. It's not looking like I intended because X, Y, and Z. So I don't think he will survive despite this result. I do, however, think it's on the table for him to, because I've seen it happen before with the Giants, let's say run back Eli Manning because of, one game and one, short stretch of an end of a season. Now it's not the same thing. Eli Manning running that back and Dave Gettleman citing a meaningless game against the Eagles versus, Brian Daboll, a guy who's just a first-time head coach who's been here. It's not the exact apples-to-apples scenario. My point is, though, is that the Giants have a history of misevaluating themselves as an organization and of using like one or two results here and there to rationalize a big-picture decision that in the long run is not the wisest choice. So it is certainly on the table that they would view something like this as, oh, yeah, let's keep it together. And for another reason why they could end up keeping a Daboll because of a result like this, if they are listening to the argument that you either keep them or you get rid of both of them, then if they really want to keep Shane, if the ownership really believes Shane's the guy and they don't want to get rid of him as a general manager, they could twist and contort themselves into saying, we're not sure about this head coach really, but we believe in this GM so much. We want to believe in this GM so much. And we do see why it would be reckless and increasingly dangerous to have this GM be paired with a new coach. And then if the GM continues to drive this into the ground, which is hard to drive it any further into the ground than Shane already has, but if it were to continue to do that, now what do? Are you retaining the coach while you fire the GM? And you're not marrying two simpatico, compatible personalities and people as a united front. Now you're, mixing and matching, which as the Bears have shown, as the Giants have shown, as several organizations have shown, Jets in certain cases, that does not often work out. It's typically a recipe for disaster. So I personally think Daboll was acting like somebody who has heard the same things that I've heard. And you've seen it thrown out there now recently. But it's the idea that, like, if you were to make me put a bet right now on the outcome of where this is going, I would say the most likely scenario is Shane stays, Daboll gets fired. The second most likely scenario is they both get fired. And the third most likely scenario is they both come back. I think in my gut, in my heart of hearts, throughout all of this, as this continued to deteriorate in this way, I firmly believe that there are enough people in the Giants building as they sit down. Now, fool me once, fool me twice. Shame on me if I haven't learned my lesson and this isn't accurate. But if you have any kind of standard as an organization, this kind of season, which builds on the dysfunction and the mess of last year that was created by this staff, both general manager personnel-wise, the operations of it, PR-wise, the way players and agents and people get treated, the way people have such a low opinion of this front office and the way that they operate, all the way to the mismanagement of the coaching staff, the finger pointing, the exodus of the coaching staff last year. If this doesn't get you fired, doesn't get everyone fired, what does? What is the Giants' standard if this doesn't get everyone fired? That's what I keep coming back to, Daniel. And I'll get to more questions here, but I have a comment I want to make about ownership as we continue to talk about this that I want to mention as well. I'll make sure I get to that. Barbara says, oh my God, Pat, another irrelevant win screws our draft position. Even if we didn't pick a QB with it, that number one pick was worth a bundle. Now it's gone. Iconic says, is Daboll gone? Do you think Shane will use this win to say he supplied good players? Iconic, that second question is a good point. I think if you watch the broadcast today, anybody who was at home watching on Fox, you continue to see the constant spin from the Giants about, and this is the Joe Shane spin, this is the front office spin. It's the look at our rookies, look at how promising this draft class is. Look at how much production they have. Look at all these tackles. They were throwing up Darius Muasal's tackles in an ass kicking against the Falcons last week as evidence of why they have promising rookies all in up and down their draft board. It is complete propaganda. Now, is Neighbors a really good player? Yes, he is. Is Tracy a good value pick in the 5th round despite the fumbles? Of course. Yes, he is. Drew Phillips, his first interception since high school today, by the way. But I personally don't think Theo Johnson is a long-term building block, even though he's a tough kid and I root for him. I think Tyler Nubin, good kid, but has to put a lot of better football on tape to prove to me that that's a hit. Muasal, I think, is just a guy, even though, again, good kid. But I think the idea that this rookie class is some incredibly strong rookie class, I think is an outrageous statement to make as a point of fact at this point. I think there are promising things about it. I think there are still questions about it. I certainly don't think it's the kind of draft class that makes you say, wow, look at the draft class the Giants assembled. I think that is disingenuous. And I think that's evidence, Iconic, of the fact that the Giants are continuing to make that argument, and Joe Shane is continuing to make that argument. Brian Boyle sets a good example for the fans. Brian, always a pleasure. Good to see you. By the way, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Holidays, and an early Happy New Year to all of you. Thank you for being here on Talkin Ball Postgame live with Pat Leonard. We're going to go here till about 7:30 Eastern, a little bit before, and then I'm going to jump off and jump right on a Zoom call with NBC New York and John Chandler. So really excited for that. Look for that tonight on NBC New York, wherever you get it on your, cable, streaming, whatever you guys are using nowadays. I know I sound like an old man. All right. Brian says, I know I'm in the minority here, so fire away, folks. I don't give a shit. I've been a fan since 65. I'm proud to say I've never rooted for the Giants to lose. If a team I root for tanks, I'm out. Yeah, I hear that, Brian, and I admire that for sure. I see both sides of it. I personally I'm never a guy who would root for a loss. I also think, like my guy Joey B, I think some of that's tongue in cheek, right? Like if you're a season ticket holder and you're a guy who, if you're a season ticket holder and you're a guy who desperately wants your team to win the Super Bowl, you obviously don't want them to lose when you watch them play. I think just, Joey B's sign and those types of comments saying, like, let's just keep tanking, I do think that's born out of a frustrated desperation of, can we just do something good for our long-term future and for our program, right? So that's what I think it is. But Brian sets a good example, guys. If you pay for a super chat or a super sticker in our chat in the queue, I will jump right to your question or comment and answer it first. And Brian, thank you for always supporting me and for supporting the channel. I really appreciate that. Jay Farry says, Pat, playing with fire. Joe Shane going to give Locke $40 million after that performance. What would you do, Pat? No problems, only solutions. Jay, that's funny. No, this definitely jumps out as an outlier, right? For at least with this team, for Drew Lock and what it means for his future here, for the Giants, for Brian Daboll, for Joe Shane. I think it's a relief for these guys to avoid being winless at home, to avoid an 11-game losing streak, to get a better feeling about all of themselves. Like as Wan'Dale Robinson said after the game, he said, not one bit do they talk about like trying to lose. He said, coaches aren't coming to us saying we have to lose for a certain pick. Guys are fighting for their livelihoods. I think that last comment is the one that rings truest to me. Because think about it. Here's what people don't understand. And I see like people in my mentions on Twitter or X, yelling at me about tanking and stuff. Tanking is not players on the field intentionally looking like they don't care, right? Like on purpose to lose the game. Because what tanking is an organizational philosophy where it's like, we don't mind if we keep losing because it'll help us get better players in the draft, right? And then whether it's putting guys on injured reserve, whether it's demoting certain people, elevating certain players, moving on from your franchise quarterback midseason and then putting in guys who look like they're not very capable, right? All of those things are front office organizational decisions that can be tanking. Head coaches and quarterbacks and players, they don't want to tank because they want their next job to pay them more money. Like a player who's going to be a free agent, or a player who's still under contract but could be cut at any moment, or a coach who knows that he might be on the street tomorrow. They're always trying to win. So the interesting dynamic of this is that Brian Daboll and the players may have shot Joe Shane in the foot here, because this could be like, usually the way this breaks down is you have the front office and the organization kind of behind their backs, crossing their fingers about, listen, we want to look like we have a competent product and like our roster looks good and improved, but we also wouldn't mind continuing to lose and having our choice at the player we select, right? So this is, as I see Daboll stumping for himself at the podium, and I see the players working hard, not only to get a win, but let's face it, like it's also about getting certain stats, certain milestones, certain markers. Some of these guys have, incentives in their contracts to make more money based on how they perform, a certain stat they have or games they start. So there's a lot involved, but whatever your motivation is, guys are motivated. And so I think, some people misunderstand what tanking means. Tanking does not mean you tell your defensive tackle, just as an example, to let people in the end zone. You know what I mean? Like tanking means the front office and organization has their, if not stronger, has their fingers crossed behind their backs that the team keeps losing while they show some positive signs elsewhere. Thank you, Jay Farries and Brian. Thank you guys so much. All right, let's see. Barbara says today was even worse than last year because we had the number 1 pick and blew it. Peterstown says an FU win from Daboll because he knows what's about to happen on Black Monday. Exactly. Shoved this win down the throats of all Giants fans. If he gets fired, why not take the draft pick down too? He's vindictive. Peterstown knows what's up. Very good point. Joey B says, well, Pat, the sign didn't work. I'm glad they got a win and had the best game of the season at home. But I'm sad we blew the pick, so I don't know how to feel. This is purgatory. John says this game is dedicated to all you guys who think teams, players, coaches tank. We just covered that. Ken says Drew Lock won't even be on the team 2025, and now we will miss out on the top 2 picks. It's amazing how inept the Giants are in every way imaginable. This team tortures us all season, and then this. Johnny says, I'm more worried about winning this game, winning this game will convince Mara that Shane and or Daboll just needs more time. That will be the worst outcome of this win than losing the number 1 pick. And, that brings me to a comment I wanted to make about ownership. Now, guys, I have been talking to you for months now, and I've never stopped talking about it, about the fact that Steve Tisch, to me, is the wild card to all of this. Because John Mara, in plenty of these other instances, previous regimes where they have retained a GM, fired a coach, or fired both guys, a lot of times the consistent element of the decision that pushes it finally over the hump, it's typically Steve Tisch entering the fray and saying, enough is enough, right? Like, we've gone over this before, but just to go over it again, obviously McAdoo Reese was John Mara authorizing the Eli benching, and then seeing the reaction to it and feeling like he had to react, and then not liking how it was handled, and certainly feeling the heat from former players and people around the organization. He fires everybody, right? So after that, Pat Shurmur, Dave Gettleman get hired, and then Mara wants to retain Gettleman, and Tisch wants to blow it all up. They compromise, and they fire Shurmur and retain Gettleman, and they hire Judge. Then when it was time to adjudge the Judge and Gettleman pairing, which was obviously oil and water, John Mara, knowing that Joe Judge had inherited a disaster team and roster and had been promised a minimum of 3 years, after that second year, as things deteriorated and the press conference and all that happened, John Mara was still on the fence about all of it, understanding, I need to do right by these people. But Steve Tisch essentially came in and said, what are we doing here? Enough is enough. We have to, abandon this. We can't stick with this any longer. And Steve Tisch pushed it over the hump, and they fired everybody. Then they hired Joe Shane and Brian Daboll. So now, as we arrive at this new juncture, John Mara has been the only one out there, the only person we've seen, the only person we've really heard from. Now, obviously, Steve Tisch, we've talked about this before, personal tragedy several years ago. I'm not sitting here holding Steve Tisch's feet personally to the fire, but I would say that Steve Tisch, the Tisch family, they are 50% of ownership here, and they have a huge say-so. And their history, and Steve Tisch's history of being the one really stressing the need for change when it's necessary and being the one who pushes it over the hump. I bring this up because of this. I am now starting to see Steve Tisch's name be mentioned in other outlets, in national outlets. I believe Dan Duggan with The Athletic has also been mentioning Steve when he talks about these matters. And Jordan from ESPN may have thrown it in there now and then. I'm not sure if he did it recently, but obviously he'll name him when it comes time. But nationally, outside of the few of us who have explained to people consistently what the dynamic is here, most people have completely eliminated Tisch from the conversation and the descriptions of what's happening and what might happen. And they have explained that, like when you watch NFL Network, ESPN, or you listen to any national insiders or so-called insiders, they're constantly saying, what will John Mara do? What will John Mara do? What will the Mara family do, right? Well, I'm here to tell you that Steve Tisch's name is now being mentioned by some of these other people. Some of these other people who are having things leaked to them, maybe team-friendly leaks, maybe not team-friendly, but maybe people who are plugged into that higher ownership level where ownership is pushing more out to certain outlets to try to get a certain, let's say, narrative stretched or pushed or clarified. And so I think it's very useful to know and to observe that Steve Tisch is now on the tips of a lot of these other people's tongues because, and I can't stress this enough, I don't know what it means about which way it will get pushed, but I can promise you if Tisch is now being thrown into the mix publicly as one of the people along with John Mara who is about to make a decision, I promise you what that means is that the dynamic is going to shift in the conversations that are happening when it comes to Black Monday. Now, that could mean that Tisch is going to go strong on this coach has to go. I don't have a high opinion of him at all, but I really feel strongly about Joe Schoen. That could be what the Tisch feeling is. Or it could be just like it was 3 years ago. John, what are we talking about? Enough is enough. That's it. So we'll see. Jay Farry says, Pat, you have always been in the middle. Have you ever liked any of these executives enough to back them, or do they just give you the side eye? Oh, no, Jay, yeah, for sure. I mean, there's executives around the league that I have higher opinions of, lower opinions of. You can look at the Colts today. Like Shane Steichen is a guy who I like him as an offensive play caller, but I think as a head coach, he's lacking in a lot of ways. Even some of his situational play calling, very strange, more of like a coordinator than a head coach. Gus Bradley, I think his defense absolutely stinks. I think his scheme is vanilla. I think the Giants had an easy time attacking it. The players didn't look motivated. Chris Ballard is a general manager there who, from my vantage point, I feel like he probably works the media pretty well. He drafted really well early, but on the back end, the drafts haven't been as good. And that's a team lacking in a lot of areas, including, obviously, again, what's a common thread? At the quarterback position. So, that's an example of one team, what my opinions are of them. I'm no secret that I feel like Les Snead of the Rams is one of the best general managers in the league. I have a high opinion of him. Howie Roseman of the Eagles, I think, is a fantastic GM. But Howie Roseman at the beginning of this season, when the Eagles looked like they were crumbling, I was criticizing him very harshly right here on this podcast. So I think what I try to do is just be fair and honest and direct, whether it's praise or criticism. And what I find, Jay, is this is my opinion and what my experience is. I think that the people, and this could be a GM, it could be a coach, it could be a player, the people who get it, like who understand that we all have a job to do and also understand that this is a merit-based business, those people, they respect being direct and honest as long as you're fair both ways. I think the people who are constantly whining about the way they're covered or who are trying to constantly spin things out of the truth into their own versions of the truth to protect themselves, usually that reflects either thin skin or an inability to handle the job that person is in. And often I think it says more about them than it says about me. So, I don't know. I mean, some people call it being negative when you're critical. I don't think being critical is being negative, but that's my 2 cents there. Joey B says, Pat, we got to do a Talkin Ball live from the stadium at the draft party, and guests who are there join you live. Your show has been the highlight of the season for me. I appreciate all that you do, brother. Joey B, I really appreciate you saying that. And I've said this several episodes in a row now, and I know I'm teasing you guys, so I apologize for that. But I do have a really exciting announcement to make about the podcast for the new year in 2025. And this is for Talkin Ball Live. This is for Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, with all the guests that we're going to have on the show upcoming. Some really exciting stuff in the works. I think a Talkin Ball Live from the stadium at the draft party, if not on draft night at the draft party, maybe doing another event leading up to the draft might be a good idea. I think that would be a good thing, because I do covering the draft sometimes is you're juggling a lot of things in my role with the Daily News as well. So it's hard to maybe do a draft night podcast live, but I think maybe doing one the week of or the week prior, I think all of that would be a lot of fun. Johnny B says there's also plenty of stories being written trying to sell the narrative that Shane needs at least another year. What great coach will want to come into that situation? That story seems planted. Right. Yeah. Listen, Joe Shane, to be honest, I think he would make a really good head of PR because he's extremely active with trying to push and craft narratives. And from my vantage point. And I think that, to be honest, I think he's pretty good at it. I mean, you saw last season where, as I was working on a story about the inner workings of the Giants front office and coaching staff, the Giants preempted that with their own version of the truth, leaking their own version of what had happened with the Wilkins brothers and Martindale and all of that. But then obviously, eventually what you saw was the truth, which is what I wrote for the Daily News. Kevin says, if the Giants can't draft Sanders or Ward without giving up future picks, they should try to trade for J.J. McCarthy. They would look so ridiculous, though, for doing that, Kevin, judging that he's not worth something and then giving up something for him. Now, obviously, you could make that trade and not have egg on your face if you tried to give up minimal capital because you had judged, obviously, that he wasn't worth a significant amount. So now you're saying, well, we want him just at our price, right? So you could do that. But coming off a double knee surgery, and just because Minnesota wants Sam Darnold back doesn't mean they don't want J.J. McCarthy. Jay commented that people were pissed before I even showed up here. Todd says, sign Travis Hunter and bridge quarterback and await Arch Manning in 26. Isn't it possible, though, that Arch isn't until 27? Isn't that what they said, that he could stay an extra year? Zane says, odd they couldn't do this all year. Yeah, well, they don't have a lot of talent, and they're not well coached or well run. So you have a lot of different people saying a lot of different reasons why it hasn't looked like this. But the bottom line is there's a lot of bad teams in the NFL, and the Giants are the worst. At least they were prior to today. Now they're one of the worst. Tommy says Titans will take Ward, Patriots will take Hunter, Browns will take a D lineman, and the Giants will still land Shedeur Sanders. We'll see, Tommy. Dan says, who's to say Hunter will even be available by the time the Giants are on the clock? As of now, they sit third, and when Cleveland loses this evening, they are going to drop to fourth. Wow, we have a monster super chat coming in. And Joey B, thanks again for saying that about Talkin Ball Live. Probably going to clip that for social media. Jay Farry says, a lot of this stuff is bullshit, but when I heard Bill Belichick was going to college with North Carolina, Joe Judge is the perfect recruiter. What do you think? Lifetime employment. Jay, first of all, that's a $50 super chat. Cheers to you, Jay. Thank you so much. You honestly, you don't know how much that means, how much you guys mean, all the support for the channel. I really do appreciate it. Man, oh man. When people support me and support my podcast and Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard like that, salute, Jay. Thank you so much. That makes all of this worth it. Jay, so I don't think I think you're asking if Joe Judge will go to North Carolina with Bill Belichick. I don't necessarily see that. I think he's in a position with a good Ole Miss staff. And also my understanding, Ole Miss, I think you guys have seen this, right? It's been reported, but Ole Miss's NIL kitty is pretty solid, right? Like they have some money to spend. They're pretty active and advanced in how they do things down there as far as assembling a team and building and trying to retain in this new college landscape. And so the way I see it is Judge has a good opportunity to continue learning the whole new climate there and helping build that with Lane Kiffin. And they have some really good prospects coming up, including on the offensive side of the ball there, where I think Judge will really benefit from staying and rounding out his resume, because we definitely saw in New York that one thing, he can continue to hone in on is the offensive side of the ball. So I would think he stays at Ole Miss. Joey B says, Pat, give us the real deal. Are Joe and Daboll coming back? Who should we draft? What's the move? What's the dirt coming? Give us the shit, Pat. Joey B, appreciate you again. Joe, what I think is my opinion. They both get fired. Who do they draft? To be honest, I think like you probably want to try and get a Travis Hunter and then spend money on whoever you feel is the best free agent quarterback and draft a guy like with a second round pick or something like that, or a third round pick, and keep turning the roster over like that, but with a new regime that has a new clock. And this is obviously if the Giants pick is falling far enough where they're not in the driver's seat to draft a quarterback that they obviously love. As I'm talking to you, I'm watching Sam Darnold have his arm hit as he throws, and I'm just thinking very hard about whether we're going to see Daniel Jones play any snaps for the Minnesota Vikings this season. That would be something else. Darnold staying in the game. So we're all good for now on the Daniel Jones watch. But Joe, I can't sit here and tell you like with 100% certainty what is coming and what is not. What I will tell you is Brian Daboll was acting today like he has heard and is aware of all the things that I've told you, which is that my best information is that Brian Daboll understands that he is likely to be fired. Like that's how he is acting. That's how he was talking after this game. That's what I think. I think that Daboll is definitely out. I think this is my opinion, not reporting it. My opinion, based on what I have heard, is that Daboll is going to be out, and the only question is whether Shane will be too. I think in the end, they will fire both of them. That's what I think. But like I said earlier, Joe, the thing that is standing out to me right now is like if you were to bet on this in Las Vegas or in a sports book somewhere with my bookie, I would say the betting odds would be the most likely is Shane comes back, Daboll fired. Then next is both get fired. Then next is both get retained. I don't believe both get retained. Let's see. Try to get through as many questions as I can here. Thank you, Joey B, again. Dan says you can count on Philly sitting everyone next week because they locked up the 2 seed and the Giants winning that game, so they'll fall even further down the draft order. But Dan, aren't we still waiting to see what happens with the Minnesota and the Detroit games here? Because aren't the Eagles still possibly jockeying for seeding all the way at the top of the NFC? Like if the Lions lose to the Niners tomorrow, right? And then I think it's like with Minnesota winning this, then you have – so if Minnesota wins this game, they go to 14-2. And then if Detroit beats the Niners, they go to 14-2. The Eagles are 13-3. I think if Detroit wins on Monday night, then maybe you're in a position where they're definitely the 1 and the Eagles are the 2 and the Vikings can't necessarily get to the number 1. But I don't know all those exact permutations. To be honest, Dan, I'm waiting to see how the NFL spells it all out for us and the scenarios, because there's a possibility, I believe, I may be wrong about this. Correct me if you guys know something else. I believe there's a possibility the Eagles could be playing for something next weekend, but we don't know yet. I think. Someone clarify that for me if I'm wrong. Craven says nothing matters unless you have a quarterback. Winning made getting one in the draft cost more than it would have. We're locked into Jameis Winston. Oh boy. Hey, Jameis is fun. I'll say that. I mean, maybe not for fans, but definitely for just like watching as an objective observer. He's also a hard worker, as Benny Fowler has told us on the Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast. Just a reminder, brought to you by MyBookie, Boom Chaga, and Estate 98 Coffee. MyBookie.ag. Use Pat's Picks, the promo code, for a 50% match up to $1,000. Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, boomchaga.com. Talkin Ball 25 is the code for 25% off, or use the QR code on your screen right there. Or Estate 98 Coffee. It's estate98.com/Talkin Ball. 80% off. Special discount now. Go get it. All right. And we're going to have our Estate 98 Coffee Giants trivia coming up next. So be aware. Be aware. It's coming soon. I'm not going to jump you guys like that, but in a few minutes, we'll do our Estate 98 Giants trivia question. The winner will win a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. All right. Jim says, Pat, would you say the win today significantly increases the possibility we sign a longer-term quarterback? What if we also beat Philly? Like who, though? See, I find it hard to believe that Sam Darnold would be interested in coming back here, playing in New York. I know he's been rehabilitated in Minnesota, and, you know, you want to go where the money is, but, like, isn't that system perfect for him with Kevin O'Connell? And I don't know. It doesn't feel right for me that he would come here, you know, and obviously Minnesota retaining him. So who's the next guy, right? You're talking about Kirk Cousins then? That scares the hell out of me. I mean, and also to me, Kirk Cousins is only going to get you to a certain place, right? He's a middle tier. He's better than what the Giants have had, but where is that going to get you? What are you building with that? I guess you're just continuing to build the roster around him, and then eventually trying to hope that you draft your quarterback of the future to be paired with that growing young roster. Really put you in an awkward spot, though. D-Pat says, Pat, has your opinion on Drew Lock changed? Did he just need more first-team snaps to learn the system? Or is the Colts' pass defense that bad? Is Drew a Giant next year? If so, new contract or franchise tag? He doesn't feel like a good fit to me with Brian Daboll's offense. I don't think he's been comfortable in it. I don't think he's a Giant next year. We'll see. I personally don't think so, though. I mean, listen, Tyrod Taylor last year was skipped over for Tommy DeVito when he was healthy. This year, the same thing happened to Drew Lock. And but it even happened to Drew Lock this year before he even got a chance to play in a regular season game as a starter, right? He came in that fourth quarter for Daniel Jones, but he never started. And then they just jumped him for the third round pick or the third quarterback on the depth chart. To me, you saw Tyrod Taylor say, yeah, I'm not coming back here, and went to the Jets. And to me, like, Drew Lock is a professional. I don't think he would come back to a place that did that to him. That's my guess. He didn't tell me that. That's just my guess. Jonathan says, no, we'll do a franchise tag or like a 1-year, $5 million, same deal. D-Pat says, you mentioned Tim McDonald has the chops to be GM, but isn't it true he keeps getting promoted despite the Giants losing? Seems like a Nepo baby who has had no success. What I'm saying about Tim is I do think he's a smart person. Now, he has been party to all of the Giants losing and to these personnel decisions that have put them in a bad spot. And so he bears responsibility and has to bear accountability. He's also family of ownership. So it's obviously a unique situation. My point is, I think he's a smart person who has enough personnel chops. And also, John Mara keeps saying how good he is, how smart he is, and keeps promoting him, and he keeps moving up in the organization. I'm saying, where is he moving up to? So if he's moving up to essentially inherit John's chair, that could be one thing, right? He's going to inherit that seat. That could be the deal where it's headed, where it's going. But could you have a situation where the Giants just lean completely into who they are and they go full tilt on the nepotism and the belief in Tim and the belief in themselves, and against all other odds and against everyone outside saying the Giants need help actually fielding a team and they need the NFL to step in and fix them again? That could be the Giants' way of putting their foot down and saying, no, we know what we're doing, and here's how we're going to prove it, you know? So, let's see. Dan Hegeman says, Shane can't come out of this draft without taking one of the top quarterbacks. So now he'll have to package up a bunch of future draft picks to trade up to get whichever 1 or 2 is still available. Yeah, and listen, I'll say this as clearly and as directly as I can. Joe Schoen has not shown me that he knows how to pick good players. Nightmare situation, says Dan. D-Pat says, I hear you, John Ryan, but I wonder if he would sign for that. Tyrod was upset. They started DeVito over him. They did the same thing to Drew. He may say, smell you later, like Tyrod did. D-Pat said it before I did. I just didn't see his comment yet. Hooks says, we still have a chance at the top QBs. The only thing this reminds me of is when Houston beat Indianapolis 2 years ago and dropped to number 2 and picked Stroud instead of Bryce Young. Turned out great for Houston. Yeah, but, you saw this year, Stroud, a little bit of a tougher time. Jury's not out exactly on him being a good player. He's a good player, but, we'll see. Bryce Young showed some fight this year. Ken says the only ones madder than Giants fans or Raiders fans from 1 to 8 in a week. I will tell you this, guys. I did hear someone in the Giants locker room ask if the Jaguars and Raiders had won. So definitely people paying attention to it. Dan points out Stroud has regressed in year 2. And yes, injuries on the O-line, wide receiver. NY says Giants decided to play the last week of December. Really? Dan, who knows full well the Giants' history, says, damn well Mara is bringing Daboll back after that effort today. K-Mac says one of the worst wins in franchise history in the worst season in Giants history. Corey says, I hate it here. This organization is beyond help at this point. BW says Colts didn't play any defense. DBs weren't even trying to tackle Neighbors and Slayton. Honestly, an abomination of a performance by the Colts. If Gus Bradley is the Colts defensive coordinator, even next week, let alone after this season, I don't know what to say. Steichen, man, it's got to be a lot of it's got to be on Steichen and Ballard too. I mean, what are they doing? K-Mac trashing Joe Schoen. George, I do not think this saves Daboll's job, but we all know the Giants' history of making huge, sweeping, incorrect decisions based on one result. Alex says Daboll knew Joe was tossing him out, so he dialed up a real game plan. I know you're kind of kidding and kind of not, which is why I'm laughing. Rondo says, does this win demonstrate that this team is playing for Daboll, or does he and Shane get fired? I'm so sick. I don't think it means they're playing for Daboll. I mean, here's the thing about Daboll. Like, he does spend a lot of times trying to coddle players and enable players, as you've seen with Neighbors over this season. So sometimes players like him because, like, he just gives them whatever they want and lets them do whatever they want. But listen, there are so many players who faded out of view, out of sight, leaders of this team who are no longer hanging around. You don't see Bobby Okereke at his locker. You don't, a lot of guys, Dexter Lawrence, haven't heard from him. I know he's on IR, but even guys in the locker room like a Darius Slayton, Brian Burns, these are guys who have talked less often recently as the faces of this team. It's kind of like guys don't want to really be too strongly associated with this, I would say that guys are playing for their own paychecks and their own futures more than anything. Javi says the Giants will be at 4 once the Browns lose. What a clown show. Steven says, I was okay with Daboll and Shane staying. I want them all fired now. Tommy says Mara allowed too many outsiders to ruin the franchise. Judge, Pat, Ben, Daboll, Joe, Quadzilla coming for revenge, breaking record MetLife, can't make it up. Black cloud continues to hover over the organization. Mello still thinks they could get Shedeur Sanders at 4. I don't think Dion will allow Tennessee or Cleveland to draft his sons. If the quarterback's not good enough to be drafted by teams who need quarterbacks ahead of you, how good is he? Rondo says Giants will sign Flacco to a 2-year deal and will try to get Arch Manning. If you know the Giants, then you know why. Javi says, Pat, since we've played ourselves out of a QB in the draft, how much would the going rate be for Sam Darnold? I'm not convinced he's the answer, but someone has to be a QB. I don't think he'd want to play in New York, but you're talking franchise quarterback money. I would think, based on the market this year. Not Josh Allen money, but Sam Darnold. Now, here's the thing. Like I said, I do think Darnold needs to. If I'm Darnold, I want the combination of both. I want to be in the system while also making the money and cashing in. So that'll be interesting to see. Daniel, what now if we can't get a QB? To me, that's part of the regime change. The regime change would be, man, oh man, this has been completely, it's toxic. It's not salvageable. It's ugly. There's too many. It's too much of a puzzle that with a lot of pieces that don't fit together. Too many of their decisions have left them with just a roster of I compared it in a story I wrote a week ago to it's a PowerPoint presentation with a bunch of slides with players and pictures and ideas of what they're going to be, but it doesn't all come together in a full plan of what the team is going to look like. And here's what the whole is, and here's how we accomplish winning because of it. So Lamar Go G-Man says, I'm not sure who they're going to draft. Get ready for Kirk Cousins. Sandy Claus says, watching this game, I kept saying to myself, no way this is real life right now. Daniel says, Pat, what happened? No planes today. They got canceled. The company told a couple of my fellow colleagues, I believe Ryan Dunleavy and then Ryan Novozinski, Novo, so at the Post and NJ.com, they each reported different things about essentially there were planes that were supposed to fly over from fans, and they got canceled because of the cloud overhang of the weather. The company said that there was a certain level of cloud overhang where they're not allowed to let those planes go up in the air over the stadium. So that was why. It was fairly clear around the start of game time. So a little bit skeptical of that rationale and those answers, but that was the reason given. It sounds like we're going to see some planes over Lincoln Financial Field next week in Philadelphia. Joey B says, Pat, we got to continue the lives in the offseason. The sign didn't work today. I don't know how to feel. I'm happy we look good, but sad we lost the first pick. We are going to continue the lives, Joey, and I have exciting announcements, and I'm not just blowing smoke, exciting announcements about where this podcast is going and what we're going to keep building. I'm going to tell you one more time about our sponsors, and then we'll do a few more of our highlight questions. If you want your questions answered, please purchase a super chat or super sticker. That will guarantee I get it in before the 7:30 buzzer, at which point I'm going to switch over to a Zoom with NBC New York and talk with John Chandler, and I will be on NBC New York talking about the Giants and going over everything there is to know about this team and the direction, and bring a little Talkin Ball to your cable television sets. So looking forward to that. But, yeah, if you want your questions answered, definitely please purchase super chat or super sticker now. But just to remind you, mybookie.ag, rolling out the red carpet for sports bettors. Risk-free Thursdays, Pat's picks on all my social media accounts, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, X, and Threads. You're going to go to the link in my social media profiles. Go to Pat's Picks. Use it's PATSPICKS. Make your first deposit, and you'll get a 50% match of $50 or more, all the way up to $1,000. I've been making people money this year with my picks. Promise you. There are years where I haven't. This year I am, and I'm trying to keep it rolling here all the way through. We'll go through the playoffs. We'll go through the Super Bowl, and hopefully into the 2025 year with my bookie into next fall, when maybe the Giants are going to have a new regime. But go to mybookie.ag. There's a link in all of my social media profiles. So here on YouTube, on PL, on NFL, Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard podcast, or on X, Threads, Instagram, wherever. Click on that link, make your first deposit, use the Pat's Picks promo code, and get that deal today. My bookie, bet anything, anytime, anywhere. Also brought to you by Boom Chaga Mushroom Super Drink, natural extract loaded with anti-inflammatory, immune-boosting antioxidants and heart-healthy compounds. You can easily pour this natural liquid supplement into any of your favorite drinks. I put mine in my coffee every morning and immediately feel the difference. I personally felt a post-workout-like energy boost with Boom. Chaga also has the ability to lower cholesterol, reduce inflammation, and improve immune and heart health with its beta-glucans and antioxidants. Go to boomchaga.com today to place your first order. Use the Talkin Ball 25 code or access it through the QR code on your screen, and you'll get 25% your first order on the subscribe and save option. Right now, that means a month's supply costs you only $30. Start feeling the difference today at boomchaga.com. And brought to you by Estate 98 Coffee. Estate 98 Coffee is a specialty coffee concentrate, all natural, with no sugar, that is convenient for, that is perfect for when you want to make a quick cup of coffee and skip the lines. Takes me less than 10 seconds to make a delicious Estate 98 iced or hot coffee. It's great as a mixer for espresso martinis, and each bottle can make up to 16 cups. Go to estate98.com/talking ball to get an exclusive offer for 80% off your first order. Ooh, looked like some shade there from Matt LaFleur to Kevin O'Connell. What was that? Anybody see that interaction at midfield between O'Connell and LaFleur? Really interesting there. What was that about? All right. So, let's see. No Met says, hey, Pat, happy holidays. The Giants organization stinks. However, Giants fans complain too much and not enough. What am I missing? I think no Mets. I think there's Giants fans on both sides of it where it's like, hey, why did we win a game finally and now we're hurting our draft position? And then there's Giants fans who are saying, I'm never going to root for the team to tank. It's finally good to see like some winning football and somebody actually put something on the field that I can hang my hat on and say, oh, we have a player who can do X, Y, and Z. Great. Good to know. I think all of those fans are saying the same thing, which is we just want to see this team headed in the right direction and nothing fleeting, right? So like the people who want the number one overall pick or didn't want to win this game, they just want some sort of surefire way to guarantee that they're going to either acquire a player or a quarterback or whatever it is that would turn the franchise around, and that would not just mean like a better game on Sunday or a better season next year. It would mean that the Giants were putting building blocks on top of one another on the way to sustainability, right? You want sustainability is what you want. So I think the Giant frustration comes out of that. Daniel says, Pat, thank you for this forum. It's really great. Happy New Year. Let's hope for better days soon. Yeah, thank you so much, Daniel, for saying that. Let's see. All right, we're going to end with our Talkin Ball Estate 98 Giants trivia question of the day. It's brought to you by Estate 98 Specialty Coffee Concentrate. Here is your Giants trivia question. All right. Okay. The Giants scored 45 points today. It was their first 40-point game since 2019. It was their first game scoring 30 points all season. But here's your trivia question. And when I ask this question, your job is to put the answer in the queue. The first person to put the right answer, you will win a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee. This was the Giants' highest point total in a victory and at home since when? So the Giants, 45 points in a victory over the Colts. This is their highest point total in a victory and at home since when? And who did they beat in that game? That's your Giants Estate 98 trivia question. Jay Farris, you're really funny. You dropped a $50 super chat, and now you're talking all kinds of shit. I'm so confused. You do like this podcast, or you don't? I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand. You're kind of cracking me up here. He says, wait, where is this? Hold on. I got to find this. He says, I got to find this. This is amazing. Oh, he said, so I can't find it, but there's one comment. Jay Farry says, talking ball, more like talking shit. And no, I don't think Brandon Brown is the answer. I saw Daniel ask that question. Mark says, everyone is assuming Sanders and Ward will be drafted in the top 3. Look at ESPN and PFF rankings. Neither rank in the top 10. One or both could easily fall to number 4. Let's see. Timothy got the answer right here. This is the the highest Giants point total in a win and at home since December 9th, 2012, when they defeated the New Orleans Saints 52-27. So Timothy, Saints 2012, that is correct. Timothy, here's what I want you to do. My Instagram account is PL on NFL. That's my handle. Please direct message me on that handle, PL on NFL. And I want you to send me your address or a P.O. box, wherever you want it sent. And I will have the folks at Estate 98 Coffee send out a free bottle of Estate 98 coffee to you. Thank you so much for participating and for being here. Steven is speculating that Jay Farry's meant to spend $5 and spent $50 by accident, and he's pissed. Is that true? Is that true? Jay, that obviously buys you some cred in the future. Although when you start, that's not true. Okay. I'm so confused. Anyway, I've been so thrilled to be here with you guys throughout the season. We're not done. We're going to do one next week after Saquon breaks the rushing record. Oh, we know. We don't know if he's going to play yet. I'm just trolling there. John says, Pat, I never thought as a fan we'd be going through the 70s, which I did. There's no hope at this point. None. We will go out on that. I think, as I said at the beginning of this, I believe, okay, Jay Farris clarifies, I respect the product. I respect the podcast. And we're going to end it there. I really appreciate all of you. This has been a fantastic year, a huge year for me and for this podcast and this channel. This is Talkin Ball with Pat Leonard, live postgame here from MetLife Stadium after the Giants ambushed the Colts and hurt their draft position. We talked about Steve Tisch entering the fray. We talked about the fact that it seems more likely that they'll probably fire Joe Schoen and that they'll probably fire Brian Daboll and keep Joe Schoen. But I personally think they'll fire both. That's just my hunch. That's how I feel it's going to go in the long run. We'll see what comes to pass. Looking forward to more episodes this week, both with guests and Talkin Ball Live. And then also we'll round it out with a Talkin Ball Postgame Live next week, plus probably a special Black Monday episode or Tuesday after whatever goes down on Black Monday. We will see. Joey B says, thanks, Pat. Jay says, fun time, Pat, even though we suck. And George says, I think the Eagles are playing their starters next week. The game might move to Saturday. Thank you so much. Guys, make sure to tune in to NBC New York. I will be joining John Chandler shortly to record an appearance that will appear tonight, Sunday night on NBC New York. Go check it out there. Thanks for being here. Thanks for all of your support. If you missed what we did at the beginning, the first 10 to 15 minutes of this episode, we talked a lot about where I think this is going. So that will tell you all about what I think about Schoen, Daboll, this game, their performance. I'm happy for Drew Lock. Malik Neighbors obviously seems like a special player. But Happy New Year, as I'm a fan says. And thank you and so long from Talkin Ball Live with Pat Leonard.